Hi guys, in this part we're gonna talk about these snaps, the object snaps a little more. In today's session we will finish the topics of the snaps. I sketched these two curves and then we will go for the explanations. Very well. As the first point that I have mentioned before, if you wanted to have only one of the object snaps activated, we use to right click on the desired object snap. For example, I right click on the midpoint, it deactivates the other snaps temporarily. Then we can use the midpoint of the curve. Then if I want to use or need the others, I right click on the midpoint, then the other snaps will be activated too. But here there is another approach, so watch this part carefully. At first, you should select the line that you want to sketch or the curve, whatever. At first, you should start your command, your desired command. Then in the object snaps, if you hold down the shift button, check this out, as I hold down shift, they are getting transparent. After that, if I click on midpoint, a single click, nothing has happened, but check this out. Start the polyline, midpoint snap is activated. The midpoint snap is considered as the start of the polyline, as you can see. So we can focus only on the midpoint. So this is the approach that we use it for activating a snap temporarily. For example, if I want to activate the perpendicular and deactivate near, I hold down shift and then I click on perpendicular. Apparently nothing has happened, but check this out, the next point of polyline is the perpendicular snap. So we can easily sketch it and specify the perpendicular snap as the next point of the polyline. But a point here, while you hold down shift on these snaps, two object snap options will be shown that they are not visible normally, which are project and disable, that turn to between and percent, as you can see. I'm going to talk about the between and the percent. Actually, between gives you a point between two curves. For example, here, if I want to start a polyline from, at the middle part of these two curves, we can use between. I pick the line and then I hold down shift, then I click on between. Check this out, this side of the polyline is between. I specify the curves that it gives me the between. Let me deactivate a small track. After that, again I hold down shift, I click on between, then I specify the points to get access to between them by this way. I press down enter. Well done. The next one is percent, that I want to talk about it, which is very useful option. Again, I pick the polyline, I here hold down shift, then I click on between, percent, Then we want to specify a value for the percentage of the line. For example, 30% of this line. And then I specify the point as the start of the line. But I should specify the curve near end to specify the direction of the division. For example, from the right side of the left side. I click at the right side. Then I should specify the snap percentage. Then I specify, for example, at each 25%. I press down enter, check this out. As you can see, the line is divided into 4 parts. Then I start the line from the percentage of the 75. Then for the next point, I want to find the point of the 40%. I hold down shift, I click on percent. Then I select the curve near end. For example, the left side, then I specify 40%, then I click on this, press down enter. All in all, we can use these invisible snaps that can be visible by holding down shift button. But let us have a review on the snaps. For example, end, the end point, and the near, it gives us a point on the line or curve. Point, if you got a point in the scene, it gives you the point, midpoint, I told you before. And the center and the intersection. If you remember, I told you a point about the intersection, but I'm gonna tell it again, don't worry. When we got two lines that are crossing through each other, there we got intersection. But if we do not have, didn't have an actual intersection between two lines, still the snap of intersection does work out. As you can see in the top view, these two got intersection. Check this out, the apparent intersection. As we talked about the apparent in the splitting, then I can take the intersection point. Check this out. As you can see, the projection of their intersection of these two lines is considered. And another point about intersection is that your open view does matter. For example, I adjust this view. Right now the intersection is changed. Check this out. Since the view has changed. Again, if I modify the view, check this out, the viewport, then I will have a new intersection. So the angle of the viewport does matter in specifying the intersection. I mean the intersection, the perspective view, is dependent to the angle of the viewport toward the curves. And the next item or option is perpendicular, which gives you the perpendicular point to the curve. For example, I start a line, then it gives you the perpendicular point. And here, as you can see, sometimes we got some challenges in finding the perpendicular point. So at such a condition, we can right click on the perpendicular and then we can easily find the perpendicular snap. Or we can hold down shift and click on perpendicular. Check this out. You can easily find the snap and then sketch your line which is perpendicular. Since sometimes we got some snaps overlapping, so it is difficult to choose or to find the right snap. We can use this approach. And about the tangent, for example, I start sketching a line. Then if I activate the snap of tangent, check this out. The point is tangent to the line, to the other curve actually, and you can have the tangent activated alone, so it gives you access to the tangent point, as I showed you in the example, that when we are sketching a line or a curve, we can specify the second point which is tangent to the another curve. Let's talk about quad. What do you think about it? As you know from AutoCAD, when we divide a circle into 4 parts, each of the divided parts are called a quad. Actually, this is not wrong, and neither wrong nor complete. Here, if we had a circle, let me activate the quad. These are the quad points or quad snaps of the circle. Very well, but if we had a curve, let me sketch the curve to give you the next example. You will see that the quadrant or quad is the snap to the point on a curve that is at the maximum x or y point relative to the current construction plane. Check this out. I want to tell you here, if I sketch a horizontal line and then make it close to the curve, the first point that got intersection with the other line is called the quadrant. Then if I move on and move it downwards, then this would be the next point of the intersection, which is the quadrant. If I move downwards, check this out, this is the another quadrant. So whatever intersections that the straight line is tangent to the curve is called the quadrant of the curve. Again, check this out, these are the 3 quadrants. As you can see, is the maximum x and y point relative to the current construction plane. I sketch a horizontal line. Then if I move it downwards, you can see the line is tangent to the circle, which is the maximum point relative to the current construction plane. In the next example, if I sketch a curve like this and then a vertical line, then I'm gonna show you the quadrants. Check this out. As you can see, the maximum x and y points are considered as the quadrant points. Let's try with a vertical line and then I make it close to the curve. Check this out. This is the quadrant. The first intersections between the vertical line and the curve. Check this out by this way. And as I showed you, the quadrant points of the circles and the arcs are at the extremes in each construction plane axis direction. And quad is snapped to the point on a curve that it is the maximum x or y point relative to the current construction plane. Well done, let's go for the next, which is knot. As you can see, it snaps to a knot on a curve or surface. Here if I place some points by this way, watch this. Actually it is not that much useful. And then I'm gonna sketch a curve. Following the process, I'm gonna cross the curve through the points or connect the points to each other. Actually we call these points knots that have been used in the sketching of the curve actually. If I sketch another curve, as you can see, these points that we specify them are the knots by this way. But I place these points before sketching the line just to show you the points. But if I move the curve, as you witness, I use these points, in other words, connects them to each other, and then created the curve. And these points are the knots, which are the points in the curve that we have used them in creating the curve by specifying the points on the scene. And as I told you before, it is not frequently used. And about vertex, it snaps to a mesh vertex, and it is only used for mesh, and it is frequently used in mesh tools, while in other types of the geometries we do not use it anymore. But I want you to know that we use vertex in creating mesh. But in the continuation, I'm gonna talk about project and planar, that these two are very important topics and also practical in Rhino. Actually, project is a kind of snap, and planar is an auxiliary tool that helps us in drawing. And these two work with each other, and in other words, complete each other. So let's check it out. And I want you to watch this part carefully and practice the examples. As you remember, we talked about the concept of C-plane or current plane in the previous sessions, which is the current work plane. For example, the perspective view, if I sketch a geometry or a curve like this, a rectangle, if I sketch it in the right view, then it will be adjusted to the right view C-plane, and this will be the shape if I sketch it in the front view. Could you guess which of the views have similar work planes? For example, right and front views don't have similar work planes, but top and perspective have got equal or similar work planes. If I sketch a rectangle in the top view, as you can see, it is similar to the perspective. Or in perspective, check this out. These two have been sketched in the same view, in the same work plane actually. Going on, I want to talk about, when we sketch something, a curve or a geometry, if we do not to an object or a point or a line or whatever, then the curve will be drawn in the work plane. For example, in the top view, check it out in the perspective view, we got it in the current plane. But if I sketch a rectangle or other shapes in the front view and I do not snap it to a point, then check this out. As you can see, the red axis is the plane of the front view, which is the origin point of the X coordination. In the continuation, if I sketch it in the right view, check this out. I do not snap it to a point or like this. As you can see in the perspective, we got the rectangle along the y-axis and the origin point. So if we do not snap the curves while sketching them in the different kinds of views, they will be sketched on the work plane, on the current plane actually. Let me give you some other examples and see where we should fix this. Watch this part carefully, please. In the top view, I want to sketch a rectangle like this, which it is not close to the origin point. And another one here. I disable the project and planar, and none of them are activated. Then I pick the line. Then I'm gonna start sketching the line from the midpoint, and then I open the front view by this way. For instance, I continue sketching it. I hold down shift, then in the top view I connect it to the midpoint. Let's check it out in perspective view. This is the result. While I wanted to create an entry like a gate, but the result is different, is not expected. I did not expect this. As I told you when we are sketching, if we do not snap the point, if we do not use snap, it will be adjusted based on the current plane. Let me try again. I want to sketch it in the 4 views, so you can check it out. By this way you can learn the concept deeply. So just watch out where do I click and then analyze it. I start from the midpoint. I'm using the snap of the midpoint. As you can see in the perspective view, we have started exactly from the midpoint. Then in the front view, here there is nothing to snap to. So watch the perspective view. It is along the X direction or X axis. I place the point, then another point. I haven't used the snap, so the line is sketched on the work plane. Then I get back to the top view, and then I want to snap the point to the midpoint. And since I'm using snap, the midpoint is considered as the plane, as you can see in the perspective view. I want to give you another example, so I move this. Since the plane is not fixed, I wanted to sketch a gate. Let us work on the next example, and then I will explain all of these and then fix them. For now, consider this rectangle, which is not started from the origin point. Then I want to sketch a curve or an arc in the top view, so I pick the 3 points curve arc. Then I start sketching and intersection, and then I want to specify the third point in front view. And since I don't use snap in specifying the third point, check this out. As you can see, the arc is just that based on the current plane in the front view. While I wanted to sketch it in the top view, I mean on the plane of the top view. So this is the result, which is not expected. But how do we can fix this? How do we can revise it? Let's check it out. I remove these, and then I'm gonna sketch the revised version. Here we should use planar. Actually, the project snaps all points to the current C-plane or current plane actually. I mean, it doesn't let the points to switch the planes when you modify the views. So you can have all of your drawings in a similar C-plane. In other words, it keeps all of your sketchings or drawings parallel to the current work plane, and the main work plane or C-plane is specified by your first click. Let me give you an example here. Let us start here in the top view. I pick the polyline, then I click at the midpoint. Then when I move it to the perspective view or front and right, check this out. As I switch between the views, as you can see, this is changing too. But right now, if I activate planar, as you can see, it snaps the point to the same work plane. Here, if I disable it, check the top view, the C-plane is changing. It is on snaps to the first view's C-plane. I turn it on. As you can see, it is constrained to the C-plane of the top view. Watch the perspective view. Right now, we can sketch our entry or gate since the points are snapped to the current work plane. Watch this. This is the result. And as you can see, the curves are constrained to the one C-plane. In the continuation, let's sketch the arc. 3 points, arc 3 points. It is very practical. The first point, the second one, then I want to specify the third point, but if I keep the planar snap disabled, if I change the view, the plane will be changed too. But if I activate the planar snap, and as you can see, after placing the first point, the subsequent points are in the plane with the initial point. And as you can see in the perspective view, it is perpendicular to the work plane. In the next example, suppose that let me pick the line and then I start sketching it like this. After that, I wanna continue it or extend it in the view and then design a form. Here, if I keep the planar object or snap disabled, I want you to follow the process from top and perspective views. I start sketching, take this out by a click. Right now, the planar snap is disabled. As you can see, the point is adjusted based on the red line. It is adjusted based on the work plane. Undo. But if I enable the planar snap, check this out. As you can see, all of the subsequent points are in the plane with the initial point, and then all of the points will be snapped to the current C-plane. And the first or initial point does matter in specifying the C-plane, and then it maintains the subsequent point at the specified C-plane by this way, as you can see in the perspective view. And if I sketch another line, watch this, and another line there. Then, when I specify the first point or initial point, the initial point determines the subsequent points planes. If I specify the point in the front view, the subsequent points will be placed in the front view C-plane. And if I start from somewhere else, on the condition that I do not use snap, as you can see, their planes are the same, because the planar snap is enabled by this way. Here there is one point left that I want to tell you, and then we're gonna talk about the application of the project snap. Assume that we got a vertical line which is perpendicular to the work plane. I want you to practice all of these examples by this way. Right now the planar is disabled. I click. I want you to guess the position of the next point will be at the same level with the first point or on the plane. What do you think? Absolutely, on the work plane. Check this out, or on the ground, since it is not a snap to a position, so it is sketched on the C-plane. Undo. But if I turn on planar, check this out, the points will be placed exactly where the initial point has been placed, at the same level of the initial point. So the subsequent points are placed in the plane that the initial point is placed. But till now I told you that all of these results are under the condition that we didn't have used snap. Right now I'm gonna work on the previous examples, but with some little differences, like these two rectangles that we've worked on before and another rectangle there. By this way, let me modify the height, for example at this level, and then I minimize the size. Here I'm gonna sketch a gate or an entry. I'm gonna start a point from there, and then I extend it till the height of the another rectangle, and then I close the curve. So let's check it out. For views. So I just want you to watch this part carefully. I pick the polyline, and then I enable the planar. So I want to make sure that the points will be placed at the same plane. From the midpoint I start, and then I maximize the front view by this way. Then I connect it to the end. I start from the another end, and then in the top view I connect it to the midpoint. So the planar is enabled. I expect drawings in the same work plane, but this is not the result. I mean, the planar did not work out. I mean, this is the result despite of using the planar. Since a condition is required while we are using planar to place all of the points in a same plane, which is not using snaps in sketching the lines. In other words, we should either use planar or the snaps. I mean, if I delete this rectangle and then I start sketching from the midpoint, the planar is enabled. Check this out, I can have this gate without any problem. Guys, let's check it out. We haven't used snap. But if we want to use another object in the process of sketching and then snap the points to it, then at this situation planar is not effective. Let's check it out. From the midpoint, the planar is enabled. As you can see, watch this part. I want to follow the process by this way, but as soon as I sketch the point, I snap it to the end point of the rectangle, after that the planar is no more effective. But at this condition we can consider the rule of the project. As I told you before, project and planar work with each other. In fact, when planar is trying to keep all of the points at the same plane, snap would ruin everything and does not let the planar to keep the points in the same plane. In this situation, we can ask project for help, since we need the project to handle the situation. So I start the sketching, specifying the first point, and then as I want to sketch the gate, as the point is snapped to the end, it doesn't let to maintain the point in the same plane. Meanwhile, we should enable project in order to prevent snap or to make it ineffective. I enable project right now. Watch this. As you can see, this is the projected end that we are using the position of it, and also we do not connect the line to the point, and the points are in the same plane, as you can see. But some of you may say, okay, we can disable these snaps. Don't get me wrong, guys, we need them. We need them to be projected, but we don't want the line to be snapped to the points. So at such a condition we use project. And let me tell another point, and then we will work on some examples. And about the point, in the second that you are starting the sketch, you shouldn't enable the project, since project does not let you to specify or start from your desired point. For example, when I snap to the midpoint at the first time, we need the snaps, since I'm gonna start from the midpoint. So at the second that I want to start the sketch, I disable project. I specify the first point, for example the midpoint, and then I enable project. Watch this, then I project the end. As you can see, project does not let the snap or to point to the snap to the end, as you can see, and we are sketching the gate based on the projected points. Even here, project doesn't let us to take the midpoint, so we turn it off. And then we finish the sketch. Sometimes a snap is interrupting the process that we should use the project. In the continuation, let us execute the process in some other examples. Here I sketch another rectangle, and then I want to sketch an arc that I'm gonna consider one of the points of the arc midpoint of this line, but I don't want to snap it to the line. I want to use project. We're gonna use the height of the line, and then by using projection we're gonna use the midpoint, and we need a snap to give us the midpoint, but we need the projected midpoint. Right now the project is disabled. Let's check it out. For instance, I specify end of the arc, then the start and point of the arc here in the front view. If I do not use projection, then I specify the point. Check this out in the perspective view. This is the result. But if I use project this time, let us try again. I pick the arc 3 points after specifying the initial or first point, and for specifying the point on arc I should enable project. So I wanna activate project when it was needed, since it may interrupt the sketch. Check this out. I enable project object snap. I enable it. Then it projects the midpoint of the line, and as I told you before, the opened view does matter too, because right now I'm in the front view and then I place the point. But here a question may come to your mind, that what is the application of project itself, since we are using it with planar actually, and these two are working with each other, and it removes the effect of a snap, so we can constrain the sketch in just one plane. But what is the application of project individually? I disable planar, and then I'm gonna give you an example. Like here in front view, let's check it out, and then by arc I sketch the arc and start and the point on arc. Check this out in the perspective view. In other words, you neutralize the effect of the snaps and then draw the objects or the curves and the origin point. But when we enable planar, it will keep the curves or all of the geometries in the specified plane by the planar. But if I disable planar and then using the project individually, all of the curves or the drawings will be projected on the origin point by neutralizing the effect of snap objects, which is not that much frequently used. In the continuation, I'm gonna give you another example and then finish the topic. Suppose that here we got several lines. I sketch 2 of them here, this side of the origin point and the others at the other side. And then in the perspective view, let me modify the heights and the levels. I move them upwards by this way. I want to adjust them at different levels, and I move these downwards. Watch this example or this part of the video carefully. In the continuation, I'm gonna start sketching some geometries or some models by using these lines. Let me move these a little bit. Very well, and then here if I pick the line and if I enable project, in the second that I want to sketch, you can see that it projected on the midpoint, origin point. Check this out. For example, if I want to start from the midpoint, project gives us the projected midpoint, not the midpoint itself. So this is the neutralization of the snap, that we can't have the midpoints, but the projected midpoints. So in the second that you want to use planar, you should disable project. By this way, then I'm gonna sketch a shape or whatever. Right now, my first or initial point that I specified in the scene is very important. I mean, if I want to sketch something that it starts from the midpoint, the planar is enabled. And then if I want to connect to the another midpoint, if I want to have all of the drawings in the same plane, I should enable project. Then check this out. In the perspective view, you can follow the sketching. As you can see, the midpoint is projected in the plane that the initial point is placed. Check this out. By using project, we can get access to the projected points in the same plane. All in all, the first or initial point that you specified in the view does matter. Let us work on another example. This time, for instance, I'm gonna start from here. As before, we should disable the project at the beginning, since we don't get access to the midpoint. I disable it. I specify the initial point. Then, since I want the geometry in the same plane, I should use project again. By this way, as you can see, all of these sketchings are kept in the same plane because of the projected points. So when we use planar, it is important where to specify the initial point. But about the application of project itself, I mean individually, without using planar, as I told you, it neutralizes the effect of snap and it projects the points and the origin point, since planar is not enabled. Check this out. As you can see, all of the points are projected in the midpoint, I mean origin point, and as you can see, we got it along the x-axis. Planar and project are really useful while you are sketching an object or a curve. That I want you to take time and practice on these examples before going for the next session in order to learn it deeply. For instance, you can pick the line and I want you to guess the position. I mean, before specifying the point, you can guess and then start sketching, because this would help you to have a deeper understanding about the planes, the views, and the projected points. And as you know, wherever you click or specify the point does matter, and it is different in the views. So before you specify the point in the view, I want you to analyze the position or guess, since imitation itself is just for the surface level. Following that, I'm gonna tell you another application for planar and project, and then I give you time for practicing. While you are using move, copy, and array tools in the 2D views, you have to enable project and planar, so it moves the objects or the curves correctly when it avoids the unwanted movements. In this example, I will tell you, for example, by using move command. Suppose that here we got a cube like this, and then another cube there. Let me move it a little bit. For example, I place it at the center. Very well. Then in the top view, I want to move one of the cubes only at the top view, which is the 2D drawing. Right now, project and planar both are disabled. I select it, move. Then from the endpoint I move it, check this out, and everything is okay. But if I open perspective view, as you can see, the height of the cube has changed. This is the previous height or level. Check this out, this is the movement. This is the unwanted movement. We didn't want to modify the height of the cube. Let us try again. I want to show you. I selected it and then I moved it. Check this out. Actually, at this condition or situation, since we do not access to the other views in the 2D drawing view or 2D views, actually some movements would happen that we may not be informed. So I recommend you to enable planar and project both. Then check this out in the perspective view. Then if I start the command of move, then as I'm moving the cube, as you can see, the height is constrained. It is restricted to the plane, to the sketched plane, and it is placed at the correct place. This was an example by using move. This time I'm gonna give you an example in using array, copy, duplication, or whatever. For instance, suppose that here I wanna sketch a rectangle like this and another one inside of it. I modify the height, I move it upwards. This time I want to make some copies or make some duplicates. I disable project and planar. I select the lines, CO, start the command of copy, and then I make a copy. For instance, I want to use the midpoint. Check this out. Then I make some copies like this. Let me place multiple versions of it by this way. Let's check it out. They are not at the same plane. We got them just like the stairs. But why? What is the reason? Let's check it out in the perspective view. Again, I'm gonna make some copies while following the process in the perspective view. Here when I select the curves or the rectangles and then I start the command of copy, then as I make copies, as you can see, the plane is changing because of these snaps, object snaps. While if I enable planar and project both, then we can have them at the same plane or just parallel to each other or in the same line. So take this into consideration while you are using move, array, copy, duplicates or whatever in the 2D views. You have to enable planar and project both together. And the final point, some of the auxiliary commands constrain the curves or the sketching from changes in planes. For instance, I sketch a vertical line perpendicular to the work plane. Then here if I keep the endpoint to sketch to continue the line, project is disabled and planar is enabled. I sketch the lines. We have them at the same level or height. But if I disable planar, then we will have differences in the height of the points. Check this out, they are placed on the origin. As I told you, some of the auxiliary commands constrain the drawings in the same plane, just like ortho. Here if I enable ortho, as you can see, the movement is restricted to points at the multiple of the specified angle from the last point created, so the changes in the plane is impossible. So we got them at the same height or same level. But if I turn off ortho, it is no more restricted. Otherwise, if I turn it on, the movement is limited to the specified plane based on the last point created. So note that when we enable ortho, then we can have the movement restricted to the points at multiples of a specified angle from the last point created without enabling the project and planar. And the another tool here is Smart Track. Since Smart Track can change the planes while sketching, let's check it out. For example, I start sketching from the endpoint. I turn off ortho by F8. Then if I enable Smart Track, check this out. That is a system of temporary reference lines and points that is drawn in the Rhino viewport using implicit relationships among various 3D points. And these reference lines and points are at the same plane. So the tools of Smart Track and Ortho enable us to sketch the line restricted to just one plane without using project and planar. At the end of this session, I want to assign you on homework. So, wait for a second to show you the image that I want you to sketch it and work on it. Check this out. Here we got a chair. I want you to sketch this non-stop. Without interrupting the polyline. But note that I want you to use polylines, not a single line, which are connected to each other. So we can specify points without a pause in the sketching process. So you have to pick the polyline in the scene. After that, you should sketch the chair exactly like the image. But before going to practice on the homework or sketching the chair, I want you to watch the video carefully, practice the examples, and after mastering them, you can go for the chair. Since all of those practices, all of those examples are prerequisite and required to be known before practicing on the chair. So just after learning the Parade project and planar tools deeply, you can start.